Now let's go ahead and look at the second part of Lesson 2, which is the practice work. Let's first look at question 2. Why can you use a random sample to make an inference? Well, remember that a random sample is often representative of the population, and when that's the case, we know that the inference will be valid. So we can use a random sample in order to make an inference or draw a conclusion about what the rest of the data might show. Now I'd like for you to take a look at number 3. Explain why Darren's inference is not valid. First, let's examine the information that we have. It says that Darren only surveyed a random sample of 10 students from his science class. And while a random sample would make it a valid inference, 10 students in his science class certainly does not lead us to draw a conclusion about the most popular type of TV show among students in his school. Likely, Darren's science class does not include all the grade levels at that school and may not include students of different demographic backgrounds. So Darren's inference is not valid because his sample size is too small and is not representative of the entire school. Next, I'd like for you to try questions 5 and 6 on your own. Come back and check your answers when you're finished. All right, go ahead and take a look at the work and responses for questions 5 and 6. If there's something that you're still not sure about or something that you don't understand, please come see me so that we can talk through that. Now I'd like for you to try questions 8, 9, and 10. Notice that all 3 of those questions are based on the information here at the top of the page. Okay, when you're done working through those 3 questions, come back and check your answers. Based on Alicia's data, the number of t-shirts they should order is 180. Now let's take a look at the answer for number 9. Thea's data estimates that the number of t-shirts they should order is 255. Now, looking at these 2 answers, we notice that they are quite different, and both of them are probably not valid inferences. So we need to go back before we can answer question number 10 and take a look at how they conducted their surveys to determine if Alicia or Thea could make a valid inference. So back at the top of the page, we notice that when they were surveyed, it says Alicia surveyed 50 students in the cafeteria. Thea surveyed the first 60 students who arrived at school one morning. And the question you need to ask yourself is, are either of these going to produce a representative sample of the entire population? In this case, it's really hard to determine that Alicia or Thea made a valid inference. The reason for this is because there is a large difference between their 2 results. So the data that they collected does not support the same inference. While both sample sizes are relatively large, Alicia surveyed 50 students and Thea surveyed 60 students, those data values are not collected randomly. Okay, Alicia only surveyed students in the cafeteria. Well, what about students that didn't go to the cafeteria that day? And Thea only surveyed the first 60 students who arrived at school in the morning. What about the students who came a little bit later? So neither of them can claim that they surveyed a representative sample, and therefore their inference is not valid. Now let's take a look at questions 13, 15, and 16. Go ahead and read through and try question 13, and then come back and check your answer. Then we'll move on to numbers 15 and 16. In number 13, Chantel's inference is more likely to be valid. She asks every 9th person at the entrance of the mall. That means that she chose a random sample of all of the people who went to the mall that day. Cyrus is probably not going to be a valid inference. Why not? Well, his big mistake is that he only went to one store. So his sample is probably not going to be representative of the population. Now let's move on to number 15. In question 15, we're asked if Lindsay's inference is valid. 300 out of 400 people would be 75% of the people that preferred to watch the movies in a theater. However, according to the sample, right over here, the number of people who preferred to watch movies in a theater was 30 out of the total number of people who were surveyed, and that was 100, which is only 30%. So her inference is not valid because it does not closely match the data that would support that. Now take a look at number 16, which talks about the different inferences and you deciding which ones of those are valid. Use question 15 and the table to help you answer number 16. Now check your answer to question 16. The inferences that are valid are the second inference and the last inference. About twice as many people would prefer to stream movies instead of watching it in a theater. Streaming movies was about 62%, and watching it in a theater was 30%. So 62% is a little bit more than twice the amount of people that preferred to watch it in a theater. That is true. The last inference says most people would prefer streaming over any other method. Again, theater was 30%, streaming 62%, and the number of people that preferred to watch on DVD was 8 out of 100, or 8%. So it is true that most people would prefer streaming over any other method. The last question I want you to try today is number 17. I want you to first read through the question and attempt to set up the proportion. We'll come back and check your proportion before you attempt to solve it to find the number of 7th graders who participate in after-school activities. Pause the video while you set up your proportion. Okay, first check your proportion, and you should have gotten 10 out of 25 equals n out of 190. Because what we're looking for here is the number of students who participate in after-school activities if 190 7th graders attend. Now I want you to try and solve this proportion for n to find the number of 7th graders who participate in the after-school activities. Pause the video while you do this, and then come back and check your answer. Hopefully you got n is 76, which means there are 76 students, okay, or 7th grade students who participate in after-school activities. Now I think you're ready to go on to your work.